Welcome to Geti Bit Outdoors, your informative and how-to podcast with product reviews for hunting, shooting, and fishing. Primarily, the focus is Pacific Northwest based, with an emphasis on walleye waters, techniques, the Pacific Northwest Walleye Tournament Trail, big game hunting, and archery, bringing you all the information you need to get bit by your outdoor passion. So come on in and get bit. Johnnie Candle joins me today. Johnnie is a professional fisherman and guide. It's pretty cool to hear his story of how he started his fishing career. We also talk about breaking down new water and advancements in electronics. It's time to get your bite on. All right, so I'd like to welcome in Johnnie Candle, professional guide and angler. How you doing this morning?
Wonderful. And yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. Good to talk to you. I appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule and coming on with us.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Yeah. So you were saying that you were, well, let's give everybody a little background of who you are, introduce yourself and let them know what you're all about.
All right. Let's see. My name's Johnnie Candle. I live in Devil's Lake, North Dakota currently. I have lived there now for about 16 years. Born and raised in Northeast Ohio. My father was a Great Lakes charter boat captain. We grew up as a deckhand on his boat and many other Lake Erie charter captains' boats. I probably got the fishing bug pretty honestly with a father and a grandfather that were on the water almost every day of their lives as well. So that's the short version, I guess. We can get into more details as we go along.
Sure, exactly. Well, that's funny because it seems like a lot of people that I talk to, they always have that background of, the father, the grandfather, the same thing with me. That's kind of the way, I was brought up as far as the fishing side goes. So it's kind of cool to see that pattern that everybody had that influence in their lives.
Yeah, it's I don't know what I would have done without a father, and I'm going to say more importantly, my grandfather. Not to take anything away from my dad, but let's face it, Dad had to work.
Sure.
The charter boat thing was a side business, so he was 9 to 5 Monday through Friday at a day job, and then on the weekends we would take off to the lake and run the charter boat and do that kind of thing. So
yeah. So anyway, like we were talking about with the grandparents, that's really cool to have influences like that where they can take you out, show you what they know. And, my grandpa, he was one of those guys that he loved to troll. We'd go out and we'd troll for trout for hours and hours. And if we got the occasional walleye, we were happy.
Yeah, my grandfather honestly never owned a boat. The whole time I grew up fishing with him, it was from shore or in a pair of waders. And was amazing looking back on things. I didn't even realize what I was learning. If you can dissect a body of water and catch fish from shore, when you get in a boat, you've got such an advantage. And so many things I learned that I didn't even realize I knew until I got further along in my professional fishing career. It started giving seminars and doing research on fishing topics and trying to learn more. That you start reading these same reoccurring thoughts over and over and over, and you find out, well, heck, I've been doing that my whole life. So it's kind of neat how they snuck it by you. Grandpa taught me things without me even realizing I was learning. I just wanted to be more like him and be able to catch more fish, and didn't even think that somewhere down the road I was going to use what he was teaching me in a creek that was 20 feet wide and a pair of waders, that I would use that to further my career someday. So it was an awesome relationship. And again, hopefully all of us will get that chance to pass that on to somebody else in the future.
Sure, exactly. So aside from the influences there, what exactly got you into the professional side of fishing?
I hated work.
Good answer.
Yeah, I went through college like everyone thinks you have to. And that's a whole other topic of discussion. We'll save that for another day. But I went to college. I graduated with a marketing degree from the University of Akron in Ohio. And I did okay in school. I was a fairly good student. I managed to stay away from the distractions that get a lot of kids. And I fished as much as I could through college. I graduated and spent the last summer after graduation on my dad's charter boat, kind of living it up, thinking this will be the last summer I ever really get to fish for a living, if you wanted to call it that. And got a job the following fall, and man, I gutted it out as long as I could as a door-to-door salesman for a printing company. Was selling letterhead and envelopes and menus for restaurants and, brochures and high school sports programs, and wasn't making much money and knocking on doors and being told no a lot more than I was being told, sure, I'll buy something from you. And the next spring came around, and I literally drove home from work one day and crossed a bridge on a local little reservoir and saw 20 boats out there. And I knew from where they were at that the walleye were biting and the early spring run was on. And I went home and called my dad on the phone, who lived a couple miles down the street, and I said, I'm quitting my job tomorrow. I can't do this anymore. My calling is to go fishing, and I don't know how I'm going to make it work, but I'm going to find a way to make it work. And I literally quit my job, picked up the phone the next day. I called the North American Walleye Anglers National Tour, which was a spring off of the Professional Walleye Trail. This would have been 1994. And I took the credit card I had that had about a $4,000 limit on it, and I spent over half of that on my entry fees and said, I'm going to give this a shot and see what happens. And, man, there's been a lot of bumps in the road along the way, but here I am 26 years later, I believe, 27 years later, whatever the math is, and I'm still doing it and doing it better than I have in a long time. So pretty proud of what I accomplished starting out as a kid with a 1974 Chevy pickup truck and a 1983 Lund boat behind it, and about $800 in my pocket, and turned it into a professional fishing career. So
that's awesome.
It's been a fun ride. It's been a fun ride.
That is awesome. I love hearing that. So when you got started, you went right into the professional ranks?
I did. I had never fished an amateur tournament. I had never fished a local club tournament. I had never tournament fished in my life. I had been doing some guiding on my dad's charter boat. I branched off a little bit into the smaller boat that I had purchased. Again, it was a Lund SV, and for those of you that aren't familiar with what a Lund SV is, that's the wooden bench seat boat with not even a floor in it. The floor was the same shape as the bottom of the boat. It was a console steering boat, but the console wasn't really a console. It was a steering wheel bolted to one of the wooden bench seats. It really wasn't what you would envision as a guiding or a tournament boat. But again, at 19 years old when I bought it, that's all I could afford.
Sure.
And I just said, you know what? You're not going to know where you stack up against these guys if you don't start somewhere. So again, that first year I jumped in, had that little boat with a 40-horse motor, didn't even have power trim and tilt. It had 2 6-gallon plastic gas cans that you stored under the seat. And I showed up at those pro tournaments, and there were a lot of things said behind my back and a lot of things said under people's breath. And some of the guys weren't even afraid to look right at you and laugh at you because they didn't think you were going to amount to much. But the first year didn't go so well. The second year, I qualified for the national championship tournament. And back then, they only took 40 guys to that national championship. And I pull into town for that championship tournament, and there's guys like Gary Parsons, Keith Cabayas, Bob Prop Sr., and Mike McClellan from Pierre, South Dakota. Gary Roach was in that tournament. Very good. Ted Takasaki. I mean, go down the list. Guys are all in the Pro Fishing Hall of Fame right now, and here's this 24, 25-year-old kid in an 18-foot boat with no power trim, no power trill, and a live well that I literally had to build myself and put in the boat because it didn't have one when I bought it. Wow. And I held my own. And it proved so many things at that point in my life. Number one, it proved that maybe I did have what it takes, and it proved that you don't need millions of dollars of equipment, hundreds of thousands of dollars of trucks and boats to go compete and catch fish. It's all about knowledge, understanding where the fish are and what they do and how they react. Earned a lot of heads, got a lot of credit, attracted a lot of attention. The sponsorships started coming slowly but surely, and And again, I don't know, do the math. I think it's 26 years now that I've been doing this and still rolling along.
Yeah, talk about jumping in with both feet, huh?
Oh yeah, it was scary. Other parts of the story, I think I had been out of the state of Ohio maybe 3 times in my entire life before that. And all of those were on family vacations. Never had I gotten a car with a trailer behind me and a boat and a suitcase and said, I'm driving to the Mississippi River to go fish for 6 days. Never put a boat in a body of water that I didn't know. All the other places I fished, I had either fished with my father or with a couple friends and learned the lake with them, and then you went on your own, the next year or the year after. So that first year was very, very eye-opening. I had never seen the Mississippi River in my life. I had never seen Mille Lacs Lake, Minnesota in my life. I had never seen a Missouri River reservoir in my life. I knew pretty much Lake Erie and 6 or 8 local lakes around where I grew up in Ohio. And I guess I didn't really expect to do well that first year. But the second year, a lot more confident, believing in myself a little bit more. I had a few moments of brilliance in those first couple tournaments that first year to build on, and we gave her heck. And like I said, I ended up qualifying for that national championship tournament the second year out. I think I was the youngest angler there. Don't believe there was anyone younger than me at that time. And again, that turned a lot of heads, got a lot of attention.
Sure. Heck yeah. Well, it's funny you're talking about, not having real high-end equipment, because the potholes tournament we had this year, the guys that won that one, I think they were fishing in like a 16-foot, older, we want to say it was like a Spectrum or something. And,
right.
They went out and they were able to dial it in, and they ended up winning the tournament, and as a matter of fact, they didn't just win. I mean, they crushed us. So it just goes to show you don't have to have the best and baddest. So.
No, and quite honestly, and I know this will sound kind of backwards coming from a person that's sponsored fairly heavily by the fishing industry, but sometimes I think we go overboard as an industry. We advertise bigger, faster boats. We advertise the most expensive, most powerful, high-end, colorful depth finders, 360 imaging I have on my boat, Minn Kota Talon, big giant 4-stroke motor with a smaller 4-stroke kicker motor and 100 pounds of thrust of electric trolling motor. And I'm telling you right now, a 16-foot rowboat with a 3-horsepower motor and a concrete-filled coffee can with a rope on it will still, if you put it in the right place with the right guy holding the fishing rod, outfish anybody doing it wrong with all the best equipment. I work really hard when I'm at the sport shows and boat shows to not make people feel inadequate because they don't have a big, shiny, fiberglass, sparkly boat, or they don't have a $350 fishing rod, or, you don't need all that stuff. A $25 outfit with a bobber and a sinker and a hook with a worm on it will still put limits of walleye in the boat day after day after day if you put it in the right place. So knowledge is much more important than the equipment when it comes to catching fish. There's no question about that.
I agree with you 100% there. A lot of the stuff that they have, well, I shouldn't say a lot of it, but, the industry does, obviously through tournaments and, through everybody that goes through and the trials and tribulations of going out and fishing, it makes advancements every year. And it's great to see that. But then again, you also have to think, too, that a lot of that stuff they go through and it is made to catch the fisherman, not necessarily made to catch the fish. Does that make sense?
Oh, it sure does. Don't get me wrong. I love using my super high-end fishing rod that I could feel a mosquito land on. And I'm not exaggerating. I mean, they're that sensitive. And anybody that's got to fish with one of those high-end type rods understands where I'm coming from. But a $79 fishing rod is still a pretty good fishing rod.
Sure.
Especially compared to what a $79 fishing rod was 20 years ago. I mean, nowadays prices have come down. Fishing line, you look at things like spider wire or fire line, these no-stretch super lines. They take a $35 fishing rod and make it feel like a $235 fishing rod because the line itself is so sensitive. And again, do you need 38 colors of Berkeley flicker shad? Well, probably not. There's probably 2 or 3 that are pretty rock solid, and the other colors are nice to have if you can. And there are days when they hit those other colors better than the standard colors, but you give me a Fire Tiger crankbait, I'm probably going to catch a walleye on it somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need 200 of them? Probably not. Again, I'm glad that I have that stuff. I'm very, very fortunate to be able to fish with that stuff. And if you can afford that and it makes your fishing more enjoyable for you, by all means, go out and get it. But one of the great things that attracted youngsters, especially to fishing, is if you had $5 in your pocket, you could go buy a dozen worms and a hook and a bobber, and you could go sit on the bank with a cane pole and catch something. And you didn't need a lot of money, and you didn't care that you didn't have a lot of money. You enjoyed the day, caught a bunch of fish, laughed, and you giggled, and you had a great time. And that's really what fishing's all about. Sure.
Heck yeah. I mean, that's good advice, because like you said, if somebody's just going out just to enjoy it, there's so many simple setups that you can use, like you were talking, and you can still put fish in the boat, fish on the shore, and just enjoy it. And that's what it's about.
Without question.
So going back to your guiding, now you're still running a guiding service.
I do, correct. I guide on Devil's Lake in North Dakota. We're in the northeast part of the state. Phenomenal fishery and a very, very interesting story. For those that don't know much about Devil's Lake, we were famous for about 2 decades for our flooding. Back in the 80s, the lake was about 45,000 acres. And 3 years ago, at our peak size from the flooding, we were over 200,000 acres.
Wow.
So the lake more than quadrupled in size, gained about 30 feet of depth when we were at the highest point for the flooding. The water has receded a little bit, but not much. We're only about 2 feet, maybe 2.5 feet below our all-time record high. But that flooding did wonders for the fishing. It made living in the community of Devil's Lake not so fun. They moved over 600 buildings, mostly homes, but some businesses and farm buildings. They had to move over 600 buildings because of the flooding. We lost several roads. We lost a railroad track that went through town because it's now under 5 miles of lake. So that made some interesting issues for living there. But, man, the high water made the fishing just unbelievable. It created better water quality because the salts in the water got diluted, so the water's a lot fresher now. It created a lot more spawning habitat. It gave places for the fish to hide, places for the bait to hide, and everything just exploded. And, man, do we have a very, very phenomenal fishery, not just for walleye, but northern pike, yellow perch, white bass. We have some black crappie in the lake as well. And I don't know, anybody that's traveled around the country, you always hear them say, can't wait to get back to Devil's Lake. And there's reason for it, because it's just chock full of fish.
I know we were talking about trying to make a trip out there, at least maybe even to do some ice fishing. That's kind of been on my list as far as wanting to get out and do that one. But, I really don't care what time of year it is. I just like to get out there and try it. I mean, we see so many reports of that.
Very, very unique. Prairie Lake, no rivers that run through it. It's not a reservoir. It's a natural lake, but it collects water from a very, very large basin, and it all settles in one spot. And the life in that lake is just incredible. One of the things people really like about it, open water fishing, is all the different techniques that work very well in the lake. You can use all your standard vertical jigging techniques. You can pull a bottom bouncer and spinner. You can sit there with your live bait rig and back troll if you want. But we do a lot of other stuff, too. We troll with lead core. We troll with planer boards. We do a lot of slit bobber fishing, so a lot of floats. What a great way for kids that are used to catching panfish and have never caught a fish bigger than maybe a half a pound, and you want to show them a good time. You come out and start catching limits of 2 and 3 pound walleye on bobbers. That's a riot. And then our fish tend to stay shallow for a long time. North Dakota is not known for its heat, obviously. We're known much more for how cold it is there. And the water temperature doesn't get real warm. So the fish stay shallow all summer long, and we catch them casting jigs with soft plastic swim baits. We catch them casting shallow diving crankbaits. You almost feel like you're Kevin Van Dam on Saturday morning television, casting and reeling and setting the hook in these nice big walleyes. So very, very diverse, a lot of techniques and a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like a kick in the butt. So when do you guys usually start getting your first ice?
Our first ice, I don't think it's too far away. Normally, I would say in a normal year by December 1st, you're pretty safe planning an ice fishing trip. And, you know, I thought this fall we were going to be a little bit behind schedule. Temperatures right now, while I'm driving home, and it's 56 degrees outside. But by Friday, our high temperature is supposed to be 28, and I saw lows in the single digits over the weekend, and it looks like that's going to stick around for the rest of the month of November. Water temperature was about 44 degrees last Thursday when I got on the water. So to drop from 44 to 32, if it's only 7 and 8 degrees at night, it won't take long to get down there. So I'm thinking the shallower parts of the lake, give it 2 weeks, and we might be right on track for that 1st of December to walk on and start doing some ice fishing.
Excellent. Now, you were on your way back from an ice fishing show, correct?
Correct. One of my marketing partners or sponsors is Shields Sporting Goods Store. It's a 28 or 29 store chain, mostly in the upper Midwest. And they had a big ice fishing sale out at their store in St. Cloud, Minnesota. So I was over there for the weekend, helping folks pick out tackle and giving them tips and pointers on helping them catch more fish, not just through the ice, but fishing in general. But yeah, the buzz is in the air. People in the upper Midwest are definitely getting excited. Deer season's winding down, so the hunting's about to come to a halt, and they're seeing these cold temperatures in the forecast. And ice fishing's kind of a way of life in the Dakotas, Minnesota, Montana. I know you guys have some of it out there in the Pacific Northwest, but I don't think it's near what it is back here in the upper Midwest. So
no.
Everybody's getting fired up. They're getting their fish houses ready. They're getting the short rods out, putting the long rods away, and looking forward to getting out there and enjoying some ice fishing.
Heck yeah. I know we used to be able to go out and ice fish, when I was, let's say, from 10 years old until I was, 20 years old. It seemed like we always had good ice. But, over the course of the last 10 years, it's been difficult. 1 year you'll get some. The next year there's just enough not to get on, but, too much to be able to take a boat out. So it's been kind of frustrating.
Right. And again, ice fishing is not the same as summer fishing by any means. If I had to pick between the two, I much rather prefer open water. But when your lake's frozen 5 months out of the year and you're a fishaholic, much like I am, and I'm sure you are, you got to find a way to get a line in the water, and it's the only option. So advances in ice fishing are unbelievable. Clothing, boots, gloves, fish houses, augers, sonar units, all that stuff. It's unreal how far it's come, specialized for the ice fishermen. And quite honestly, we were talking earlier about getting involved in fishing without spending a lot of money. We were at this sale, and we sat down and wrote it all down. A two-man shelter, an auger, a heater, maybe a sonar unit, and a good suit, and a handful of rods and reels and some line and jigs. We figured you could go from absolutely nothing to a full-blown, ready-to-go ice fisherman for about $1,500.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say $1,500 isn't a lot of money, but it sure as heck isn't $80,000 for a 20-foot bass boat and a 300 horsepower Mercury motor.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's nowhere near the expense of going summer fishing, and I think that's why it's gaining in popularity. Just about anybody can scrape up enough money to put together a nice ice fishing outfit and get out on the water and have a good time.
Oh, yeah. And, I know for us, our temperatures don't get quite as cold as where you guys are at. Even if we do get ice, every once in a while we'll get those days where you get the wind and whatnot. But even when we do freeze over, most of the time our daytime temperatures are 25, 30 degrees. So, for years and years, we never even had a house. We just go out in the ice and just fish without a house and, your hand drill auger and that's what we were outfitted with. So even still, somebody that wanted to get into it could even be cheaper than that.
Right. Right.
So now when you guys are out there, you do guiding for ice fishing as well?
I do not. I do not guide in the winter. I love to go for fun, but my teaching schedule in the winter months doesn't really allow me to be home and do as much guiding as I'd like to.
Gotcha.
But no, anybody wants to come out, I'd be more than glad to offer a few pointers and spots that they could check out. If you got some do-it-yourselfers, just give me a shout or an email or something, and I can direct you to the couple good spots anyways.
Now, is that something where you have to have a vehicle to be able to get out on it, or is there spots where you can go where you're within walking distance?
Yeah, there's plenty of structure in the lake that you can get to on foot. I actually do most of my ice fishing on foot because I live right on the lakeshore, and I just walk out from my home.
That's got to be rough.
Yeah. Well, that's what makes it nice. You can sit at home and you look outside, and if the snow's not going sideways, you're like, oh, well, let's fish today. If it looks kind of ugly out there, you don't have to go. But, yeah, ATV or snowmobile is nice. One good thing about living somewhere where it does get brutally cold, though, is 90% of the winters, we do have very, very safe ice, and you can drive a pickup truck just about anywhere you want to go. So if you skip that early ice season and give her a couple weeks of cold temperatures, once that ice gets 24 to 30 inches thick, you can drive anything you want across the lake. I've seen semi-trucks out there. I watched them move a house once across Devil's Lake. So
wow.
They can move just about anything. A typical winter, you need an extension on your ice drill before the winter's over. So we're talking 30, 36, 42 inches of ice. You're pretty safe driving a vehicle on ice that day.
Yeah, I would think so. We get hairy out here when we get, we've been out on, 4 to 5 inches of ice. Of course, we're just walking. But, I've never been on a lake where you had, I think, more than maybe 16 inches of ice. That's right. That's incredible. I'd like to get out and try that sometime.
It's mind-blowing for a lot of people. Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, so now, are you going to, isn't there another big ice show coming up soon?
There's a couple. I've got an event in Fargo, North Dakota this coming weekend. It's at the Shield store there. Then we've got Thanksgiving weekend after that, which I think everybody takes the week off, I hope. The following weekend is the big, it's become almost world famous, I'll just say countrywide famous ice show in St. Paul, Minnesota. I don't go to that one to represent any sponsors, but I have been to it a couple times just to walk around and see what it's all about. The incredible. I mean, imagine any of your sports shows out in the Pacific Northwest. I've been to Portland and Puyallup and all of those shows to speak, and it's every bit as big as those, only it's all dedicated to ice fishing. It's pretty incredible. You can see just about every auger made, every sonar unit made, every fish house ever made, clothing, lures, rods, reels. It's unbelievable, the collection of manufacturers that they gather to display and sell all the latest and greatest in ice fishing. It's pretty cool. It's a long trip from where you guys live to go there to see it, but if you have any other reason to be near Minneapolis, Minnesota that weekend, you might want to stop and check that show out. It's pretty fun.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to maybe put that together with a nice fishing trip.
Exactly.
It's a good excuse.
Yep.
So now you've been out here. Obviously, you've talked at some of the shows, and I think it was maybe a couple of years ago I saw where you were at one of the Sportsman's Warehouse there in Tri-Cities. So you're familiar with the area out here, and you fished it?
Correct.
Okay, so...
Yeah, it's fun. I love it out there. I came home from my first trip out there and told my wife if I had to pick somewhere to retire to, I could easily see myself living in the Pacific Northwest. What you guys call cold is a heat wave to us.
Sure.
So it's very, very mild temperatures. I've been on the Columbia River several times. I fished Moses Lake a few times, Banks Lake once. So Potholes Reservoir I fished up there. So I've had some time to get on the water out there. You guys' fisheries, you do a great job of keeping them secret from the rest of the country, I'll tell you that. I was overly impressed, not just by the Columbia, of course. Everybody hears about that. They know about all the big fish. They know that it's a great walleye fishery, salmon, trout, sturgeon, all that stuff. But man, those inland lakes and reservoirs that you guys have out there that you don't tell anybody about kind of blew me away. Not an overabundance of fish, but more than enough fish, and the size was nice, and plenty of eaters, nice larger trophy fish to release after you take a few pictures. Very, very diverse structure. Many techniques worked in those lakes as well. We caught fish a lot of ways, and I guess I understand why you try to keep it under your hat. Same reason I do. I really don't want 8 million people fishing in my backyard, but man, you guys have some great walleye fishing out that way.
Yeah, there is such a diversity as far as what you're able to fish. Like you said, if you go into the Columbia River, we've got the reservoirs as far as banks and potholes, and then of course your inland lake, Moses Lake. That's 2 minutes away from my door, so I spend a lot of time on that one. And there's so many different ways to catch them, so many different structures to fish. If you're out in potholes, a lot of times you're back in. You can be in shallow waters fishing willows, and then you go up to banks and you're fishing down in, 50 feet of water. So there's such a big diversity as far as how you want to learn how to fish them and what you want to fish for. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. I've had a blast out there, and again, I'm coming out this year. Again, I'll be speaking at the Portland show. I think they call that the Pacific Northwest Sportsman Show is what they call it. But
yep.
I'll be speaking there for all 5 days again, and then going to be in the Tri-Cities the following weekend doing another one of my Walleye University classes. We're going to do that at Ranch and Home this year. So that weekend between is kind of Johnny's week to go play again. If the weather is nice, we'll be on the Columbia, I'm sure. That's I believe that's the middle of February. So it's, pre-spawn, chance for a big giant fish, and if the wind gets too much to fish the Columbia, we'll go find one of those smaller lakes and do a little walleye fishing on those instead. But can't wait to get out there again. It's always a good time. Every time I come out there, I make a handful of new friends, and I get to share some fishing techniques, and I pick some stuff up along the way. The tackle you guys use out there is a little bit different. I love some of the jigs that have become pretty common on the Columbia River. I bring a few home and try them at home all the time. You guys use the propeller jigs quite a bit out there with the stinger hooks on them. And the hair jigs are pretty popular out that way. So I pick some of them up and bring them home and try them here and leave some of my techniques back there with other guys too. I've shared a few crankbaits and a few thoughts on where to troll them around in that river, and heard guys that have had pretty good success doing that too. So it's always fun to give and take and teach a little and learn a little while I'm on a trip like that.
Heck yeah. Did you get into some trophies when you were out here?
The biggest fish I've got so far was 29.5 inches. That's a trophy for 90% of the free world. But when you mention that you got a 9-pound walleye out of the Columbia River, you kind of get laughed at a little bit because a lot of guys out there don't think that's a big fish, which is amazing to me. That just speaks volumes for the quality of fish that come out of that river. I'd love to get a teenager out of there, a 13, 14-pounder. Last year when I was there, we snuck out for about 3 hours the day my plane left just to see if we could get one more shot at a big fish. And about 30 feet from our boat, a guy in another boat netted a 14-pounder. So we were close. We were in the right spot. We just didn't get our jig in front of the right fish at the right time. But I'm going to be out there more than once again in my lifetime, and I'll figure out a way to get one of those giants out of there eventually.
Excellent. Yeah, they've got them in potholes too. I don't know if you said you're coming over in February, that the blade bait bite out there usually in February is pretty good, and you can pull out some, teeners out of there. So. Right.
Yeah, it's like I said, the weather dictated where we fished last year, and I'm sure it will this time too. And it's just, like I said, it's diverse, it's different. The scenery is awesome. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place to go catch a walleye. And you can fish in a hooded sweatshirt in February, which I can't do at my house.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I know there's been a couple times when we've been out in potholes in January and February, and it's been, 50 degrees during the day. Like you said, you're out there in jeans and a sweatshirt, and you're just going, this is crazy.
Right.
But
right.
Your tournament fishing that you do, the main circuit that you fish on is the Masters Walleye circuit?
Yep, for the last 5 years, I fished the MWC, or the Masters Walleye Circuit. That is a professional level team tournament trail. Had some pretty good luck on that the last couple of years. Won the World Walleye Championship, or their year-end championship, in 2010. So that was a nice feather in the cap, and several top 10 finishes in the last couple of years there. But next year, I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to go back to the Pro-Am format. I'm going to fish the National Walleye Tour, which is the last remaining Pro-Am series that's a national level touring circuit. It's just time for a change. Masters Walleye Circuit is not meeting all the needs that I feel I need as a professional angler, so time to switch it up and try something else for a little while.
Excellent. So I kind of want to pick your brain, because you know how you were talking about you jumped into this, at an early age and not really having the experience as far as being a professional tournament fisherman. But how do you break down new water?
Boy, I hope you have a couple days to talk on the phone. That's a loaded question right there.
It is.
Breaking down water is the toughest part, and it starts months and months and months before you ever think about pulling your boat into the boat launch and going fishing. You look at the tournament schedule, and you look at the time of year you're going to be there. You use some of your own personal knowledge. Is it pre-spawn, during the spawn, post-spawn, early summer, midsummer, fall transition? What time of the year are you going to be there? You look at the lake to see what types of structure it has. Is it a reservoir? Is it a lake? Current, no current? Is it a river? Is it a big river, a small river? And then you just rely on those years and years of where do fish hang out X time of year on X kind of body of water. Then you start your research. And some days you'll prove that your theories are accurate, and a lot of times you'll prove that you didn't know as much as you thought you did. The internet is a wonderful tool. 25 years ago, we didn't have it. So you made a lot of long-distance phone calls, and you paid a lot of money to talk to people that could help you figure out what's going on. Now, Google, Bing, Yahoo, whatever your favorite search engine is, you can type in Devil's Lake, North Dakota walleye fishing and learn from myself and 20 other guides and 10 other fishing magazines and 6 other TV shows, and you can find all the information you ever dreamed of finding for Devil's Lake, North Dakota. So you take a combination of what you learn, combination of what you know, you put it together, and then when you get there and put your boat in the water, you hope that the fish did what they were supposed to, because there's always the chance that they're not where they were the year before or the year before that. They could be somewhere else. So it's a complicated equation, and it's one that is never the same twice in a row. And I think that's what keeps me coming back to tournament fishing. I've talked about giving it up for years and years and years. And then I think about, well, how boring is it going to be fishing the same lake every day the rest of your life? I love going to a new body of water and assuming the fish are shallow just to find out after 3 days of fishing that they're in 40 feet of water.
Yeah.
And, you learn it as you go. Very rarely do you put your boat in the water and catch them the first half hour of the day. You go out there, you look around, you see what you can see, and you start making educated guesses. And I'm going to call them guesses literally until you can prove it by setting the hook in a walleye. Then you build on all the clues until you put a pattern together, and you take it from there.
Well, and that's interesting that you bring that up, because, I've talked to a lot of people that they'll go onto a new body of water and they get so frustrated because they don't catch fish right away, or, it may be a day and they don't catch them at all. And I think there's a real misconception when it comes to people because a lot of these people, they're either reading articles or let's say they're watching TV shows and they see these people going out and they're catching these fish all the time. But the one thing they have to realize, and I've kind of realized this now doing some shows on my own, where those fish don't always cooperate every day. So, you go out and you don't catch fish, but you take what you learned by not catching the fish to narrow it down, to increase your chances for the next go around. And,
Exactly.
It's okay to go out and not catch fish. Yeah, it sucks, but take that knowledge that you've got from not catching those fish to break it down so that your next trip, you're going to apply what you've learned, even if it's something where you came back with a goose egg.
Correct. I think it's, if I remember correctly from the literature I was supposed to read in high school, I think it was Sherlock Holmes that made it famous to solve a crime by not solving the crime, if that makes sense. He would put pieces to the puzzle together, not necessarily based on what he found out, but what he didn't find out. And some days, not catching a fish will lead you to better fishing quicker than catching one or two fish in a place that maybe wasn't the best place to catch them. If I go out there for a day and I check 10 feet of water, 5 feet of water, 3 feet of water, and don't catch a fish, I just eliminated a lot of water to go out the next day and start in 20 feet of water and go deeper, and all of a sudden you find them. Sometimes if you start in 10 feet of water and you only catch 2 or 3, you get misled. You're thinking, okay, they're in 10 feet of water. I got to work harder to figure out how to get them to bite. And those 2 or 3 fish might have been part of a small number of fish that were in 10 feet of water, and the mother lode is a little bit deeper. So I don't get frustrated by days where I don't catch fish. I just don't go out and repeat the same thing the next day. You try something different, and hopefully that'll get you a couple steps closer to finding what you're looking for. And again, you look at my tournament history, I've had a couple really, really good tournaments. I've had a lot more really, really bad tournaments than I have good, and you can't let that frustrate you. You're not going to figure it out every weekend when you go on a family fishing trip, or every summer when you go on your week-long vacation, or every week when you go fish a tournament. Sometimes the fish are going to win, and that's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's good advice. I've talked to a lot of people that get frustrated with that whole bit because they'll come over from Seattle and, they've contacted me and said, hey, how's the fishing? Where should I look? And, I'll give them the advice of where to go, but it's like I told them, I said, the thing that you have to realize is that those fish don't stay there all the time. They're following their food source. So, I can tell you where to start looking, but, you're still going to have to put in some effort to be able to try and find out where they've moved to. Maybe you're lucky and they've stayed there, but generally they've moved. So, and I try to give people the advice, and this is something I've done over the last 10 years quite a bit, was if I get out, even on a lake that I know really well, I may not put a fishing pole in the water for the first 2-3 hours, because all I'm doing is just scanning. And, I'm looking for fish, I'm looking for feed, I'm looking at structure, and it might take me that long before I say, okay, this looks like the area that I need to be fishing. And by doing so, you eliminate so much water and increase your chances of being able to put the fish in the boat. But it's hard for people to do that because, they want to go fish.
Oh, it is. You should see the look in a guide client's face or an amateur tournament in a draw partner when it's 11 o'clock in the morning and you haven't put a line in the water yet. And they start getting really squirrely, and they start asking, are we going to fish today? We're in a tournament to catch a fish, not just drive this boat around. Or I didn't hire you to take me driving. I hired you to take me fishing. And my answer is, would you rather spend 30 minutes catching or 8 hours fishing? And most people want to catch. I want to catch when I go. I don't want to just sit there with a lure in the water for no reason. So I'll do the same thing as you. Now, most days, you have it dialed in a little bit better than that. You don't have to drive around till lunch before you find them. But
right.
There are some days in tournaments where you go to where you think they were, or where they were the day before, and they're not there, and you start to search. I use Humminbird electronics. I love the stuff. It lets me scan water at 20, 25 miles an hour and have a very, very good underwater picture. We've got side imaging and down imaging now, which are, newer technologies that show us fish much better than things did 20 years ago. So there's no reason anymore, if you have a quality piece of marine electronics, to fish before they're down there. So I utilize that technology and spend countless minutes every day driving around till I find the fish I want to catch. And let's face it, I think we would all agree, when they're down there, they're a lot easier to catch.
Yeah.
You fish with a lot more confidence. You fish with a lot more belief in what you're doing, and they're not that hard to catch when you find them. It's finding them that's the hard part.
Sure, exactly. Yeah. And, the advancements like you talked about that they've made in the electronics is it's incredible. I mean, a lot of the lakes that we have locally here, they're shallow. So that side imaging has just paid off immensely because you can come through, and if you're fishing 8 to 10 feet of water, instead of being right on top of those fish, you can look out to the sides and see them, set those planer boards out, and now you're running over the top of them instead of, with the baits instead of running over the top of the boat. And that's just paid off huge for us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's incredible. You got the side imaging. I use the Humminbird 360 a lot when I'm fishing very slow and casting, and you can see a piece of structure 45 degrees off your bow or 30 degrees off your stern and say, hey, look, there's a rock pile 30 feet over there. Cast a jig to it. And how many years ago did you have to find those randomly? They're up there somewhere, but you're not 100% sure where they're at. And sometimes you get lucky and you can say, look, there's a school of fish 50 feet off the left-hand side of the boat, like you said, with your side imaging. You can put a planer board out there or you can cast out there depending on what techniques you're using. And we never knew those fish were there. Even 10 years ago, we didn't know those fish were there. So, Again, the technology is coming down in price all the time. It seems like every year companies like Humminbird, Lowrance, Gray Marine, Garmin, all of them, they come out with something new, and that last generation becomes very, very affordable. And it's still very good quality stuff. So what I tell people all the time is, wait for the sale, find what you can afford, try to get the most technology you can afford to put in your boat. And, man, it sure does cut that time down when you're out there hunting for fish.
Oh,
you
heck
can look at 200 feet of water instead of 20 feet of water when you're driving around. So
yeah, and
definitely something you want.
I was looking at this the other day too. Was even the technology that they have for people that are fishing from shore or ice fishing, where they've got that one now that's come out. It's called Deeper, and the iBobber. And anybody that's fishing from shore, I mean, heck, you can use those. It goes right to your cell phone, and
exactly.
It's crazy. But
yeah, there aren't many secrets. I mean, you can literally see under the water now with your sonar. Like you said, you put that bobber on your fishing rod and cast it out there and reel it back in, and it shows you where the drop-off is, it shows you where the weed edge is. It'll show you if there's a fish out there or not. So, and again, can everyone just run out and drop the coin down to buy that stuff? Not necessarily, but boy, if you can, there's a lot of neat technology out there that's going to help you put more fish in the frying pan or on your camera roll on your telephone. I mean, lots of ways to get at them anymore.
Yeah, it is. So what would you say that your number one, and I know this is probably a loaded question too, but if you had one technique that you could fish, what would it be?
Oh boy, for fun, if I had one technique just for the amount of enjoyment it gives me, I don't know if there's much better than casting a lead head jig with a plastic body of some sort on it. I love to throw 3-inch, 3.5-inch swim baits on quarter-ounce jig head, something like a Berkeley Ripple Shad or a Berkeley Pro Shad. Those are two of my favorites. But, man, there's something about making that cast and feeling your jig drop down to the bottom and start reeling it kind of slow, maintaining bottom contact, and all of a sudden it just stops. And that to me is one of the most pure feelings of walleye fishing. Don't get me wrong, I love catching fish on a crankbait or on a Lindy rig or pulling a bottom bouncer and spinner. They're all fun, but something about the way a walleye hits a lead head jig that just sends a lightning bolt right down your arm and fires me up like there's no tomorrow. That's definitely my favorite way for enjoyment. But if I had to say my favorite way to fill the boat up, you give me a couple trolling rods and some crankbaits and maybe a few planer boards. Let me drive around and cover the water. And boy, it's pretty hard to find a more efficient way to catch numbers of fish. With the advancements in line counter reels and precision trolling data app for my phone, so I can put my crankbait right at the depth where the fish are. And again, You combine that with side imaging sonar, and you know those fish are 50 feet off the side of your boat or 30 feet off the side of your boat. You can put those lures right where they got to be and keep them there all day long. And, man, you can just mow down the fish if you're just looking for numbers.
Sure.
That's probably my favorite way to, if I have to fill the boat up with fish. But for enjoyment, give me that lead head jig. Doesn't get much better.
No, it doesn't. That's got to be my number one too. And it's funny because my dad and I, we've always fished the tournaments together, and he's always been just a diehard troller. I mean, you give him a crawler harness and a bottom bouncer, and that's what he always wanted to do. And here over the course of the last 5 years, I've really got him into the cast and jigs. And twice this year, we've been able to get into tournaments where we've had a good jig bite. And he goes, for the life of me, I don't know why I didn't do this sooner. He said, this is so much fun. And I said, yeah, it is. I mean, when you cast out and you're working that thing back in and you feel that tick and you set the hook, and, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a fun technique. It's a wonderful way to catch them.
Yeah. So let everybody know where they can find you, Johnny, as far as internet goes.
Well, yeah, it's not that hard. I've got a name that's fairly easy to remember, Johnnie Candle. Johnny is spelled like Johnny Cochran from the old days with an H, 2 N's, and an IE. Candle is just like it sounds, like a wax candle. My website, real creative, JohnnieCandle.com. I worked real hard trying to figure that one out. So trying to make it as easy to remember as I could. And follow me on Facebook. That's probably the best way. As much as I don't like social media, it's very, very effective and efficient. So if you want to go on Facebook and follow me on Johnnie Candle Professional Angler, that is my business page. I do have a personal page, but I don't accept friend requests on that very often. I would prefer to have people follow my pro page. So Johnnie Candle Professional Angler on Facebook or JohnnieCandle.com. And then all my contact information is listed on both of those sites. My cell phone number is there, my email number is there. And I publish those because I want people to use them. Don't feel like, oh my goodness, I can't call this guy on the phone. Give me a call, leave me a message. Sometimes I get back right away. Other days I'm busy traveling or fishing or whatever I'm doing. And it might take me a day or two to answer a message, but I will answer, I promise. And anything you need help with, I'm a Humminbird guy, drive a Stratus boat, Mercury Motors. I'm a pure fishing guy, so Berkeley, Abu Garcia, Fenwick, those companies. If you have questions on any of their products or what you might want to try on your next fishing trip, that's what I'm here for, to help you pick that stuff out and answer questions for you. So feel free to use me and abuse me in a nice sense. I don't really like people telling me that their Humminbird didn't work right, but we'll do all we can to get it working for you and help you rig a boat or whatever you need. So call me up anytime and ask those questions. That's the job of a true professional angler. Yeah, we're out there trying to win tournaments, and we fly a lot of flags, but quite honestly, when I look at my job at the end of the day, my number one job is to help people catch more fish. That's, in my mind, that's the definition of a professional angler. No one calls me and asks for help. It's really hard for me to help them catch more fish. So
sure,
feel free to call or email anytime. That's what I'm here for.
Well, I know everybody appreciates that, and that's what makes it nice with that, being able to access that information if they need so. So we all do appreciate that.
Yeah, and again, I'll be out there in Portland. I don't have the exact dates of that show in front of me, but I'm sure you guys all know how to figure it out. Go online and look it up. But I will be in Portland speaking. I do believe it's the second weekend in February. And then the following weekend, and I'll get you guys some information. You can always email it to you or something for the walleye class that I'm going to put on in the Tri-Cities again. It was really, really well received last year. We had 85 people sign up. It's an 8-hour school. We talk about as much walleye fishing as we can from 9 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon with an hour lunch break in the middle. So it's a fun day. I met a lot of great people there last year. Kept in touch with quite a few of them. And like I said, I taught as much as I could, and I learned some stuff too. Because if you guys are faced with some different fishing challenges than I am, and you've got some pretty interesting ways that you guys go about catching those walleyes. So shared a little, learned a little, and I'm looking forward to coming back for those 2 events this winter again.
Yeah, we'll have to come down and see you over there and introduce myself and, take the class and see how all that stuff goes. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. It'll be fun.
Heck yeah. Well, like I said in the beginning, I really appreciate you coming on, taking the time with us, and sharing the information you did. And hopefully we can talk to you again in the future.
Yeah, I look forward to it, man. It'll be great. It'll be great.
All right, Johnny, you have a good day.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening to Get Bit Outdoors Podcast. Check us out on Facebook at Get Bit Outdoors Podcast, Twitter at Get_Bit Outdoors, and you can get us on iTunes and Stitcher. Leave us a rating and a comment on the show. We love the feedback. Thanks to Fish Face Goods, FX Custom Rods, Cinetic Reels, Max Lures, Yakima Valley Marine, and Slimers. Next show, Zach Harold from Archery Maniacs is here. We just kind of talk about whatever comes to mind. It's real fun and light. You got to come in and join us to see where it goes. If you like this podcast, check out Zach Harold's with Archery Maniacs.